A lawyer hurling his shoes at the Chief Justice of India inside the Supreme Court is not just a shocking breach of security and decorum, it is a reminder of India's dangerous fault lines and of the entrenched hypocrisies of both the so-called left and the so-called right. The left, which routinely finds no problem with violence when it's aimed at someone they dislike. For example, remember when Karuna Ranaut was attacked? That left is now all shock and horror, pointing fingers at the BJP-led right wing and its so-called toxic Hindutva being to blame. Since the shoe-throwing lawyer in yesterday's case says he was aggrieved by the Chief Justice of India dismissing a plea saying go and pray to the idol and tell it to restore its own head. Yet the anger behind this attack yesterday did not come from some fringe militant religious mob. It came from a space that includes many who aren't remotely hardline, and that is what is most disturbing of all. The saffron right, meanwhile, which was outraged when Kangana was assaulted, now has a section which is low-key justifying this attempted attack on the Chief Justice of India, slyly suggesting that the CJI asked for it. Now, this is a toxic broth, a lethal cocktail of caste identity, public anger against the judiciary, communal resentment, religious victimhood, and political opportunism. And it is brewing right at the foothills of another election season. Now, let us be very, very clear tonight. Context never justifies violence. If the CJI's words upset you, protest. Challenge him legally if you can. But any attempt to rationalize an assault on the country's top judge is plain and simple dangerous and unacceptable. Both sides, the left and the so-called right, should be united in condemning this without any ifs or buts. Instead, predictably, they are busy scoring political points. And the lawyer who picked up his shoe to attempt to attack the Chief Justice of India in a truly disturbing act of violence inside the Supreme Court has spoken. Listen in.
डॉक्टर राकेश किशोर जी हैं जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट में एडवोकेट हैं, पीआईएल दाखिल करी थी। आपसे जानना चाहेंगे कि आखिर वो पूरा प्रकरण क्या था, क्यों आप ऐसे ट्रिगर हुए कि आपको मुख्य न्यायाधीश सीजीआई के ऊपर जूता उछालने की नौबत आ गई।
16 सितंबर को जब चीफ जस्टिस गवई की अदालत में एक पीआईएल लगी थी, वो मेरी दायर की हुई नहीं थी, किसी और ने दायर की थी, मुझे उसका नाम भी नहीं पता। उन्होंने पीआईएल दायर की थी कि भाई खजुराहो एमपी में, मैं भी वहाँ 3-4 दफ़े उस जगह जा चुका हूँ, वहाँ पर एक मूर्ति है 7 फुट की विष्णु भगवान की, जिसको आक्रमणकारियों ने, आक्रांताओं ने, जिन्होंने हिंदुस्तान पे कई बार आक्रमण किया, आप सब जानते हैं कौन थे वो, उन्होंने ज़्यादातर मंदिरों की मूर्तियाँ, ये खजुराहो ही नहीं, पूरे हिंदुस्तान की बहुत सी मूर्तियाँ आप देखेंगे तो मंदिरों को उन्होंने खंडित किया, अपवित्र किया। तो उसी से संबंधित एक पीआईएल किसी विष्णु भगवान के भक्त ने लगाई थी कि सीजीआई को कि आप ऑर्डर करके इसे रीस्टोर करा दें, सर लगवा दें, क्योंकि इतने समय से लोग देखते हैं और वाकई सब उस जगह से एक बहुत ही बुरा इम्प्रेशन लेके आते हैं और रोते हुए आते हैं। मैं तो रोता ही हुआ आता था। तो सीजेआई ने क्या किया कि उस याचिकाकर्ता का वास्तव में मजाक उड़ाया, मेरे सनातन धर्म का मजाक उड़ाया, ये कह के कि तुम मूर्ति से कहो कि वो ही अपना इंतज़ाम कर ले कुछ। तुम इतने बड़े भक्त हो विष्णु के, तो तुम वहाँ जाके मेडिटेट करो, प्रेयर करो, वो ही अपना इंतज़ाम खुद कर लें।
And joining me live now to discuss this, debate it, go into the uncomfortable questions over what happened that have erupted not just in the political sphere but also between the so-called left and right that seem to want to score political points against each other over what happened in the Supreme Court yesterday. Anant Dehadrai, advocate with the Supreme Court of India. Welcome, Jai. Karuna Nundy, senior advocate with the Supreme Court, will also be with us in just a moment. Jai, kicking it off with you, we've heard most comments coming in on this condemning what happened, but there's always a caveat. There's always a but somewhere buried in most people's comments. You've got people saying this is condemnable, but so and so. Is there a but in what happened, according to you, Jai?
Hi, Shiv. Good evening. According to me, I think the way you characterized him at the beginning of the show, it was absolutely right. I saw a graphic which called him a loony. This man is absolutely a briefless, loony, frustrated individual, and he had no business whatsoever to resort to or even attempt to resort to violence if he wanted to make his point. And, for the life of me, I cannot see any excuse or any justification whatsoever to try and resort to violence, and that too, with someone at their workplace. And it happens to be the highest functionary of the judiciary in this case. And according to me, Shiv, with great respect, I think this amounted to textbook criminal contempt. I am personally very disappointed with the Honorable Chief Justice of India. I hold him in the highest regard. He's a phenomenal lawyer. He's, despite being a Dalit, he has, surmounted unimaginable challenges to reach where he has reached. But I wish he had punished this person and had pressed charges against him, because what he has done amounts to scandalizing the court, and it also amounts to interfering with the administration of justice. So in my view, I think it speaks volumes as to the magnanimity of the Honorable Chief Justice, Justice Gavai. He's got a huge heart, he's got broad shoulders, and in that sense, he represents the very finest traditions of our, Supreme Court and the bar, in that he has forgiven this man, clearly attributing lunacy to him. But Shiv, if I may just touch upon for a moment what you also mentioned about this interview that he has given later, this individual. If it were not bad enough that he did this, by trying to throw a shoe, he has now compounded matters, according to me. And I do not think it's going to augur very well for him from a legal perspective. I think till now, the judges had decided, the Honorable Chief Justice had decided to sort of ignore it. Rightly so. I think got on with his day, which is perhaps disruption is what these, cretins like this individual perhaps wanted. But one very important thing has emerged from his interview. He has very clearly said that he doesn't belong to any, any political association, any faction, to the Sangh or to the BJP or anybody else or any other organization. So at least that has come out. He's acting as a lone operator, probably wants to earn some free publicity, some cheap publicity. He's trying to project himself as some great savior of the Hindus. If at most he had to say something, perhaps he could have written a letter to the Honorable Chief Justice and said that this is wrong. But by that, I just want to say one more thing. The Honorable Chief Justice has also clarified that he never made such a statement in court. It was completely misconstrued by one particular reporting organization. I do not want to name them. And then it was further, it's like Chinese whispers, Shiv. It got contorted into something else entirely on social media.
Okay.
So this person never said anything like that. In any case, he came out with a clarification later and said that, look, it could never be my intention to insult any religion. I respect all religions equally. I think that should have put to rest the entire matter.
I agree, yeah. Karuna, Nundy, welcome. Same question to you. I'll repeat it. Many of the reactions that have come out to this incident have, there's a but inserted somewhere. We condemn it, but so-and-so. Yes, this was an act of violence, but there's a context to what happened. Same question to you, Karuna, Nundy. Is there a but when something like this happens?
Good evening, Shiv. Thank you for having me on your show. What has happened and the reaction of the Chief Justice is very interesting today, because I think that this man's conduct, and I'm not going to mention his name because in significant part, these things are done, I think, for free publicity. If you look at that Jarnail Singh who went and threw a shoe at the Chief Minister at the time, Mr. Kejriwal, he, in fact, I think the same person had gone and thrown a shoe at Mr. Chidambaram. Now that person is, I believe, an MLA. So, no, I think he'd also thrown a shoe, or somebody had thrown a shoe. I think it was the same person.
Jarnail had thrown it at Chidambaram, but please continue.
Now, the thing is, I think by giving these people publicity, fair enough. By giving these people free publicity, it not only encourages them and gives them some kind of impetus, it also encourages copycats. And as the speaker before me was saying, that the fact that it appears that possibly he didn't make these purportedly religious slogans inside the court, and he's trying to, drum up some sort of support from a particular community in this regard, makes it particularly ugly. So while I appreciate that the Supreme Court, with its confidence in its institutional authority, and the Chief Justice has been particularly kind and generous and brushed it off, saying that these things don't bother us, is extremely laudable. And to not invoke criminal contempt, I think in this case is very important. I think the law on criminal contempt is actually very draconian and bad. However, the fact that the Advocates Act has been invoked, Section 35 of the Advocates Act, and to say that this person should be, in fact, hauled up for professional misconduct. This is at the lowest bar, professional misconduct. And I believe he should, he's been suspended and possibly he should be disbarred. Now, I will take issue with something that was said with regard to the caste of the Chief Justice. It was said that, but he is Dalit. And I think that that has no place in our public discourse today. We cannot say that somebody has done so well, but he is of a particular caste, right? Now, while we understand, and perhaps that is what the, at its best, that is what the previous speaker meant.
I'm sorry, that's not what I said. Please don't.
There are inequities and there are massive challenges based on that there are massive inequities and there are a lot of difficulties, and then therefore this is why understanding that there is talent across the board and that women, queer people, people of different castes, etc., do not find in normal public life adequate representation because there is in fact a default reservation in favor of all these powerful groups, then that is a different way to put it, and that is perhaps what they meant.
Okay, Jay,
that's not what the focus
of the point that you were trying to respond on, but also take my question, because beyond the general opening comments that both of you have made, and you both generally agree that this is something that deserves more action, and the Chief Justice of India has been more than generous in this case. It has become in many ways, a political finger-pointing exercise like pretty much everything these days. But Jay, some on the right, the so-called right, and I use that word in a very general sense, some sections say, they've tried to justify it in a low-key, subliminal way, that this was invited action, this anger is justified. So my question is, does any context whatsoever justify an attempt at assault in the Supreme Court of this kind?
Shiv, very quickly to respond to what the speaker before me said. I couldn't believe my ears when she said that someone would, refer to somebody being Dalit to say that they've, surmounted challenges. What I said very specifically, and I'll repeat it for her benefit since she didn't hear me clearly the first time, was to say that despite the fact that this brilliant judge was a Dalit and faced enormous challenges on account of being Dalit, which are well known and well documented in this country, and which I hope people like her will not minimize by saying what she has said right now. I'm saying despite all of those challenges, he has risen to the highest office of the judiciary. That is what I said, and I hope she understands that very clearly now, and I hope I don't have to repeat it for her benefit again. But having said that, Shiv, what you say is very right. There are instances where judges and members of the judiciary go beyond a Lakshman Rekha, which they usually draw themselves. And what I mean by that is, and you're quite right in pointing it out, that when there is an issue before an honorable court, they should limit themselves as far as possible to that issue. It is very dangerous to go into that territory of obiter dicta, which, another very senior lawyer who had come on a different show had spoken about it, that whatever is spoken in court as a dialogue is not necessarily what the order of the court is. It is only what is written in the court order that is what becomes the judgment. So taking that same principle further, Shiv, it is, I think, better for judges and all individuals, frankly, who are in the public domain, in public-facing roles, to be more circumspect about what they say, lest they go and, hurt somebody's personal feelings. So while a part of me understands that if at all the Honorable Chief Justice had said something to that effect, which was alleged and which was later clarified as not having been said at all, then I would understand that there is some amount of, outrage or some amount of, bad feelings about it. And certainly there are ways to express it. But violence can never be that way of expressing it, which is why I said that there has to be a Lakshman Rekha drawn on both sides. Even members of the judiciary, I think, should avoid getting into issues of faith, personal faith, or bringing in their own personal prejudices when it is not, or their personal feelings rather, about religion or any other such sensitive topics, when it doesn't concern adjudication of the matter at hand. It's avoidable. So why get into those issues? This is my personal belief and personal feeling. So these things are then avoidable. But I do think there's one thing I'd like to point out, and I completely disagree vehemently with what the speaker before me said, I believe she said that it is a good thing that criminal contempt was not initiated against the individual. I want to clarify that I think it is a very dangerous thing that criminal contempt has not been initiated against this person, because it will now send a message to other fringe element loonies that they can come do something like this and get away with it, and perhaps use the platform of the court as a political pulpit, which is, I think, highly, highly avoidable, and of course dangerous for our judges and dangerous for lawyers, right? And Shiv, do you recall that person in Parliament in Lok Sabha? I think it was in the last session. He tried to throw something inside, Lok Sabha, inside Parliament Hall. So, I mean, the same thing that, now should action not be taken there? Should action be taken here or not be taken here? According to me, this is nothing to do with the personal feelings of the judge. As I said, I hold Justice Gavai in the highest regard possible. He's a brilliant judge.
Yeah, no, on the right versus left conversation, you've said it very politely, Jay, but we do know that, very, very prominent voices are making no bones about a kind of, words and actions have consequences kind of conversation. Karuna, Nundy, I wanted to know your thoughts about that, because, there are many people who aren't part of any fringe or, loonies like this particular man who took off his footwear and attempted to, hurl it at the CJI. Who are hinting quite openly about a whole, when you say things like this, then prepare to face the action kind of thing. What do you think about that?
After the killings in Gujarat, even a statesman like Mr. Vajpayee, Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, made a statement like every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Then you had the riots in the pogrom in 1984 being justified. I don't think there's any other word for it. Although I'm going to caution against false equivalence between the Congress and the BJP in this regard. However, Rajiv Gandhi said that when a big tree falls, the ground will shake.
Yes.
So I think that when such an egregious event happens, that one absolutely cannot justify it on any ground whatsoever. And so what you were speaking about earlier is a very important thing. You said that there can be no buts. There can be no buts here. Perhaps the comment that that was made in the context that is being, in which it was being justified, was perhaps it could not have been made. But was it so terrible? And can one at all draw any equivalence whatsoever to say that, both sides were right and both sides should be restrained? It is a travesty, I think, to even speak like this.
Yeah.
Now, I think that there has also been, to some extent, but I want to say that people have their own responsibility when they act, right? But at the same extent, there has been a particular environment that has been created against the court systems in general. And it is this idea of one country, one India, one state, one election. And when we say one state, the idea is to then merge Parliament and the judiciary and the executive, rather than have the traditional separation of powers. So we see this issue when it comes up in the appointment of judges. We see this issue in a variety of ways.
Yeah, yeah.
So to bring it all together, and what happens, I think, is that on social media, you have a whole bunch of people who are not sometimes directly associated with the state. Sometimes people are associated with the state in some regard. Like you have Mr. Sanyal, you have Mr. Rijiju, you have others, right? Mr. Rijiju is obviously, very important minister in this regard, who will attack the Supreme Court and say that it is basically the executive who should be making all the decisions. So even in court, we see, for example, in cases of fundamental rights, where it is said quite directly that this is an area for Parliament, this is not an area for the courts, completely contrary to the Constitution. Okay. So I think that a certain environment has been created in which we are speaking today, which is why in this environment, when you have somebody who goes and does such an egregious thing, then people feel that it is all right to attack the court in a full frontal
I
manner
know
in this way.
it's become a very
things
sort of
escalate. We also have to see how
naked finger-pointing exercise even between the Congress and the BJP. You know, that's the point. It's not even under the surface. It's being used as live ammunition where the Congress is saying, pointing at the BJP and saying, you know, it is toxic Hindutva that has created the mood in this country, that has normalized this kind of behavior, that someone would think that they could even dare to do something like this against the CJIJ. You know, this also comes, and I agree with Karuna Nundy when she says there is an environment in which this is happening, there's an atmosphere in which it is happening. But my contention is that there is also, and I mean this anecdotally because I don't have empirical evidence of this, that there is a general sense of discontent and you know, public anger against the judiciary. It is a very polarizing time, and in this particular mood, you know, things that are of a sensitive nature within the judiciary can trigger anger in people. There is no question of justifying violence of any kind, but you know, the but that we came to at the beginning of this conversation, you know, sort of looms before us.
I mean, Shiv, you're right. Look, there's always been a sense of general discontent and disappointment with our judiciary. It's not new. This has existed. This discontent has existed for decades because, you know, it's proverbial. The delays in the justice system delivering, you know, justice. It is so well known. It's always been there. So I think a part of that is on account of, you know, of those delays. But insofar as, you know, saying that there is an environment of hatred, I respectfully disagree. I mean, you had no less than the Prime Minister himself coming out and saying, tweeting immediately and saying that I've spoken with the Honorable Chief Justice. I've assured him, you know, that your safety will be looked into, and I condemn this in the harshest way. I mean, in the strongest terms possible. So you had the highest member of the executive condemning it. Number one. Number two, to say that you know, earlier law ministers like Mr. Rijiju, for example, took exception with certain things that the judiciary did. Shiv, you know, I ask myself, the number one principle enshrined in our constitution is that there should be separation of powers between the organs of government. Now, I don't want a situation, frankly, where there is excessive bonhomie between different organs of the government. So is it, in fact, welcome? Is it a good thing that if there is some amount of stress between the parts, between, say, the judiciary and the executive? I think it's excellent. It shows that democracy is alive, vibrant, and very healthy in our country if there is some degree of stress between the organs of government. So to say that there is an elevated environment of hatred today versus how it was earlier, I don't think that is correct. I think there is enormous freedom today. We also forget the era of the emergency, which is, you know, the much heralded golden era under Mrs. Indira Gandhi, where you had judges of the Supreme Court who were essentially bypassed to become Chief Justice of India. 21 other judges in different, parts of the judiciary who were unceremoniously transferred because they were not, you know, kowtowing to the line of the government, of the Congress government at the time. So I don't think that there is some elevated environment today where there is, you know, hatred or anything like that. And I think there is enormous freedom of speech. People can say what they want. In fact, look at this gentleman. He's come out, he's done this thing. He's again come out and said something. Now, if there was an environment of fear from the judiciary and so on, he wouldn't have come out with an interview later and gone on and basically compounded what he's already done. That wouldn't have happened. And lastly, I think, yes, there is some justification, for example, with the entire Yashwant Verma incident that has happened where, you know, allegedly cash was found and so on. So yes, there is some degree of discontentment, understandably, amongst the people because legal procedures take time, especially criminal cases sometimes take time. So all of that, when you take it together, then there is this sense of discontent amongst the people, you know, that, look, the judiciary is not doing enough, perhaps. So that sort of sense is there. But I don't think it's anything out of the ordinary now that was not there earlier in that sense.
Anant, Dehadrai and Karuna Nundy, thank you very much for being with me on discussion number 1 on India Matters. I think, you know, it's time for all sides to draw a hard red line that violence in any context, no question of any buts, is completely unacceptable, no matter what the atmosphere, no matter what the environment, no matter what the background. Thank you very much to the both of you for being with me.